kind of slowly kind of just ease into what we're going to do today. So first of all, to remind everybody that this is being recorded. And I think probably today I'll have this video plus last week's video and the video I made of the not virtual seniors lunch where we had Constable Carr come in and talk about scams. I recorded that, and I think the recording for that is pretty decent. So those 3 videos within the next day or so I think will be up on the county YouTube channel. So even if we don't have people show up in person, there's still other folks that can watch afterwards. And also to remind those who do show up in person that you're being recorded. So if anything should happen that you don't want to be shared, then reach out to me at the time or afterwards and let me know to make sure not to make that go public. Yeah, so in a minute I'll turn it over to Peggy to introduce Alicia, who's going to talk about Food Hub and food security, and we're really lucky to have you, Alicia. I'm glad that you agreed to do this. I know you're really busy. Everybody seems to be like either way more busy than usual or way less busy than usual. There's no happy medium in this time, unfortunately. And I hear that you're on that extra busy side, so just thanking you for showing up. And thanks to you, Peggy, for bringing some consistency to this new format, seniors lunch. I think that's awesome that you're willing to come on and introduce folks.
No problem.
So I'm going to just put myself on mute and listen along. And after Alicia's presentation, she's indicated that she's open to questions and comments, so we can have a talk about stuff too after the fact. And if any others join us along the way over the next few minutes, we'll just welcome them and carry on.
Okay. Alicia is a lifelong resident of Victoria County. She grew up on a small farm in Iona and is the founder of the community market in Badek. Alicia has a great deal of experience in community and cooperative development, particularly in the areas of housing and local food. She is the executive director of the Pan-Cape Breton Food Hub Cooperative, a multi-stakeholder cooperative that operates an online marketplace to make it easy to get products from local producers into the hands of consumers. Alicia.
Thank you, Peggy. So thanks everyone for coming and listening to me. I'm going to kind of do a few different things. One is to show a little 5-minute video, and then I have a couple slides, some PowerPoint pictures to go through, but it's a really small group, so I think anytime anyone wants to, just engage in conversation, jump in with questions, whatever. I'm not married to my format, and I do not like listening to myself speak all the time. I would much rather us have a conversation and a discussion, and I'm really interested to know what you guys are seeing and feeling in your communities around food and how that's all playing out. I know it's probably the saddest thing to have this conversation about food and not be able to be together and sharing food, which I think is one of the nicest things about food is that it does always bring us together to celebrate together. So I also encourage anybody who wants to get a snack, eat well while we're on this video. No judgment here. So first thing I'm going to do is just show a little video. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. Let's see. I just tested this for the first time, so bear with me. Let's see. Does everybody see the screen now? Thumbs up? Thumbs up. Okay, great. So I'm just going to press play and see what happens. Breton Food Hub strives to make it really easy to get products from local producers into the hands of local consumers. We work with about 40 producers across Cape Breton who produce vegetables, meats. Also, we work with bakeries and seafood producers and a lot of value-added producers. Basically, the way we operate is as an online grocery store model. So producers are able to list the products that they have for sale, and then our consumer members are able to log in, order the products that they want, and we arrange for the distribution to take place. So the Food Hub has really allowed producers to grow their farms
by providing a new market for them that they otherwise were not able to access. So we know that in the 3 years that the Food Hub has been operating, we've had producers actually quit their off-farm jobs so that they could dedicate, their full-time to farming. And we've had some of our producers actually hiring full-time farm staff just to meet the increased demand that we've created through the Food Hub. So it's really exciting to think about how a very small project can make such a significant difference to people who are living here in Cape Breton, raising families here in Cape Breton, and who really want to stay and create exciting businesses in Cape Breton.
We've been farming for 7 years now.
Well, so.
And we raised 3 beautiful kids, 3 beautiful boys. That's one of the reasons why we farm, so they can grow up on a farm. With the Food Hub, we were able, it was just a few clicks, and 2 minutes you can put your products for sale, what you have for sale on the website, and then it's done. So it's a really great way to sell your products without having to spend extra time and money trying to sell, instead of just focusing on your production. The Food Hub helped us farm full time and hire on an employee as well. So the Food Hub has allowed us to increase our production, and with the farm, we're only using like a little part of it, so we still have a lot of potential. So we're really hoping to increase our production and grow with the Food Hub. So we're really hoping to make a living out of farming.
So one of the most exciting things about the Food Hub is how excited our household consumers get to order food. This has allowed them access to products that in a lot of cases people didn't even know existed on Cape Breton Island. So when we talk about things like sea salt from Cape North, or meat coming from over in Roberta, people didn't even know that these producers existed. So now they're able to sit down at their computer, log into our website, and order food from really hundreds of kilometers away, all across Cape Breton Island in 30 seconds, and place their order, go to one spot and pick it up. And people are so excited when they come to pick up their food. Sometimes we have consumers that literally grab their box and jump up and down. They're just thrilled that they are getting these beautiful vegetables, things like ginger and eggplant that they didn't even know grew in Cape Breton. And now they get to take them home, after picking them up right down the street from their house.
Food Hub means eating locally, being able to make new recipes, buying stuff that I don't really know how to use, and then figuring it out later. And it's a great way to try new things and support local farmers.
With her food on the screen, the big screen.
Yeah.
Picking up food. And there's a black screen. No, it's not working very well.
Because our ingredients get to be the freshest they are, and it sets our whole weekend for us. It's a huge variety we can get that we can't get through any
You
other.
can get the sound on that. You can use it on that.
Every Friday,
Oh, Harriet on it.
Yeah.
Do my order. It's nicer. It feels better to use the local. It's rewarding to know we're getting the freshest ingredients we can for our menu here at the Telegraph House.
As a small business owner, I always want to support other local businesses, and particularly in this case, our local farmers. And I'm so happy to do that because my guests, after they have dinner, mostly stop me and thank me for the quality of the food and the produce that we're actually putting. So here we have a local product being delivered to local businesses easily and efficiently.
So I think what we've learned with the Food Hub in its short time is that this is a really valuable piece of infrastructure for local producers. And it's also really a vital way for consumers to be able to access local foods. So into the future, I think that we will continue to grow. I hope that we continue to attract new producers, people just getting into these types of businesses who want to test products and access new markets. And I hope that we're able to convince more and more people in Cape Breton that they should be sourcing more of their food locally and supporting local businesses here in the island.
Okay. That's interesting. That video was taken about 2 years ago, and I didn't watch it, coming up to this, and it's kind of shocking how different things are now. Just looking at that and thinking, oh wow, I don't know that restaurants will be open this season. Yeah, and just like I miss so much all the people, coming together, picking up their food. It's kind of a really different experience. But I think the video is good because it really shows what we do, I think, better than I could explain it myself. So so hopefully that was good. I'm going to just pull up a couple of slides. Does anyone have any questions on that before I move along?
What's the website to get your list of vendors and all that?
Yeah, it's just capebretonfoodhub.com.
Okay.
I love that, by the way, and especially the kids. Woo! What a
They're
treat.
so cute.
Gorgeous.
They're so cute. Yeah, they're really adorable. Yeah, it's really nice. It's interesting, like in my work, there's so many younger people having kids, and and it's really nice, because you don't see that in all industries, but I think in farming, you're really seeing it. So
yeah, grand, great, good.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, a little resurgence for families and people moving to Cape Breton, just to raise their families here and do farming. So
great.
Yeah,
good.
It's great. A big opportunity, I think, for us in Victoria County because we have so much land and space and resources, right? So
Here,
sound.
Try it again.
Wow.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi.
Great. We have more people have joined. You probably came in while I was playing the video, but the video kind of explained about what the Food Hub is. And I'm just going to go through a little presentation now to talk about the history of our Food Hub and a few other things. So let's see here. There we go. So the Cape Breton Food Hub started in 2015. At that time, we had about, I think, 18 producers scattered around the island and 50 households and maybe, I want to say, like 2 restaurants. So we've expanded a lot since 2015.
Let me mess with this.
Don't bother. Why?
Sorry, was there a question or comment?
Oops.
No, okay. So now we have, well, up until a month ago, we had about 40 producers from across Cape Breton. That's probably now closer to 50. And we had about 250 households. That's probably more like 350 or 400 right now. And then we work with about 12 restaurants. So basically the way that we're kind of operating is just Cape Breton, like focused on the island. And that's, for a lot of different reasons. We kind of view the food economy here as kind of like a food shed model. So this is kind of a very distinct region. So we really have stuck with Cape Breton food producers. That may change in the future. But right now, it's just producers in Cape Breton. The video kind of explained it, but just to reiterate that this is a lot of different types of producers. So not just farmers, but also we have bakeries. We have like Victoria Co-op Fishery, for an example. Some people that do jams, jellies, even prepared foods. So there's a lot of different products that you can get through the Food Hub. So I think that not just with the Food Hub, but really when we're talking about local food, sometimes we think about it in very narrow terms, that it's just about the food that we eat every day or where that sourcing comes from. But I think from my perspective and from a lot of us that work in this sector, food is really everything. Food touches on every single point in our lives. So, I mean, you think about how a local food system, all the different components of that and all the different factors of that really have all these broader impacts. So for an example, if you talk about health, we know that, the fresher the food is, the less processed it is, the better that is for our health, right? So, so there's that, just that kind of degradation that happens to food when we ship it from miles and miles away, doesn't happen when we're eating local food. And the food itself, I would argue, is better because we know what farmers here are allowed to put on their crops, which we don't when it comes from other parts of the world, right? We have very little way of controlling, what types of pesticides or herbicides are used if this food's coming from somewhere else in the world that, we don't even know what the regulations are there. So I think there's, first, talk about that health, and I think there's tons and tons of really good concrete reasons why a local food system supports better health outcomes in people. Obviously, with the environment, excuse me, just reducing our carbon footprint is so huge right now. We talk about this all the time, but also the farming practices are another huge impact on the environment. So here in Cape Breton, we really only have small farms. If you look, looking globally, the farms that we do have are very, very small, and they are mostly all very concerned about their footprint, their practices, animal husbandry here, or animal word is escaping me because I'm talking too fast. But the farm practices tend to be a lot less damaging to the environment. And of course, the economy, we know very well that, that of course, economy and health are extremely linked. And if you have a robust local food system, you're really able to keep jobs and people. And, like the Time for You farm that has those 3 little boys, those are kids that are going into our schools, that are going to end up working here and kind of contributing in that sense. So we know that since the Food Hub started, farms have been able to actually hire full-time staff for their operations, which is huge. And we see that's happening more and more. In Cape Breton Island, we spend about $466 million a year on food. How much of that is sourced locally is kind of debatable because there hasn't been a ton of good research. But I think that our best estimate right now is that about 15% of the food that's purchased in Nova Scotia is from local sources. So if you can imagine, well, what would it look like if we took a bigger and bigger piece of that pie to source locally, and how would that impact, the economy, the environment, our health? And then, of course, there's a lot of other factors, even we talk about the way that food brings us together. The organization that you guys are part of, and the beautiful seniors lunches really demonstrate that, right? Food is one of the #1 ways that we come together as a community, that we take care of each other as community members, and that we kind of pass on skills and just, wonderful knowledge from generation to generation. So there's a whole community building aspect of local food also. Here in Cape Breton, food is also very much connected to tourism. So tourism is one of the, in our county, there's tourism and fishing are the largest source of jobs, and both really have a lot to do with food. A lot of people come here just to eat our lobster and our crab, and who can blame them? Let's be honest. And then, of course, we talk a lot about food security and what that looks like. And I think it's, it's really tough because a lot of times we're trying to help people who don't have access to food access any type of food, right? Because it gets to a situation where people just need anything at all. And, and I think that a lot of times that kind of excludes local food production, because local production in a lot of ways is more expensive because all of the costs are present in that product. They haven't been externalized into the environment, into people's health, into workers not getting paid. The costs are in that item. So it does give us a lot of trouble. And I think, I always come back to thinking that the issue really is that people don't have enough money to buy healthy food. And all the work we do is kind of working around this issue, but that central issue is still there, which is that people don't have enough money. And I think that, you know, it's really, really challenging work to kind of look at, especially in a community like Cape Breton. Well, how do we reduce poverty, and how do we kind of combat food insecurity while we're still supporting the local businesses and the local farmers that are here? And again, I think it always comes back to people need more money, and we need more money to do our program. So I'll leave that there, but I'll come back to it again in a minute. So the current system that we have to deliver food, you know, we've all known, particularly people like Marion, that, you know, have been kind of a part of this changed system or change way of thinking for a long time, that there's a lot of cracks in our system, right? We're bringing food from around the world, from countries that have different types of environmental practices than we have, different types of labor standards, you know, all different types of issues. And the shipping to get it here is extremely, extremely complicated. In a lot of cases, things, you know, food products are getting on ships and then trains and then trucks and then here, and we're seeing the cracks. We've known that there are vulnerabilities in the food system for a long time, particularly when we see, you know, storms that keep ships out of Newfoundland, for an example, right? And you see people there actually struggling, where we start to have shortages. And I think what has happened with COVID is that I don't think it's so much created problems in our food system as it has exposed the problems that already existed in our food system. So, you know, meat, for an example. So the picture that I have here is of a shelf in St. Peter's this was about the middle of March, and already there was no chicken or beef in that store. So you think, okay, well, you know, what's going on there? And it's really, you know, in rural areas, sometimes the food is, if there are shortages, the food is just being rerouted to urban centers, right? That's a problem. With meat in particular, we know that the processing facilities that process most of the meat that is consumed in Canada are these massive facilities. So in Alberta right now, one facility has an outbreak of COVID and has to shut down. I'm not sure for how long, but that facility processes about a third of the beef that we eat in Canada. You know, and you think, shocking. You know, and just being able to get things. So what happens if we're completely dependent on, you know, food coming in from California? And, you know, what if the border actually stopped to allowing products to come in? Not that this has happened yet, but I think that all of these things have really shown where the weaknesses are and how vulnerable we are to a very unsustainable food system that was, you know, I would argue on the brink of collapse for a lot of years. And I think now what we're seeing is that, yes, all these problems are now manifesting, and we really, really need to have a stronger local food economy that supports local producers, that allows distribution to take place in our region, and allows us to be resilient no matter what's happening in the rest of the world. It might not be a pandemic, it might be, you know, droughts, right? So for an example, California's been under drought for 4 years now. So, you know, what does that mean for our food security? Because at some point they're not going to be able to keep shipping water into California. It's just not going to make sense. So anyway, so that's my kind of rant on all the problems of the food system. And I know you guys have all, you know, been aware of this and watching this for a lot longer than I have, and you probably have a lot more to add on that. So I just want to touch base a little bit on the response that the Food Hub has had since COVID-19, because I thought maybe people would be interested a bit in that. So we, well, all the farmers markets in Nova Scotia had to close. We don't know when they're going to reopen. We're being told to prepare for the fall, potentially. And I know that has some serious implications in Victoria County too, and hopefully we'll get to have some meetings and figure that out. So we partnered with the Cape Breton Farmers Market, which has been really successful. So we were able to get a lot of their vendors online and get a lot of their typical shoppers shopping. So that kind of all happened really quickly. We decided that because we couldn't really guarantee the 6 feet separation if people were coming to pick up their food, as what you would have seen in the video. We decided to do home deliveries across Cape Breton. So that's been it's been phenomenal, but it's been very interesting. Like it's kind of like a 10,000 square kilometer delivery point. So we've been delivering, you know, from Dingwall to Eskazoni to Port Hawkesbury, Mabou, Glace Bay, like kind of everywhere. We're only doing once a month deliveries in Bedeque and Ingonish, and then we're doing weekly deliveries in Sydney and that kind of area. And that will change again. We'll do the end of the month in the end of May in Bedeque and Ingonish, and then we'll do weekly after that. I think that's a plan right now. The other thing that we were able to do with COVID-19 was to get some federal funding, which has allowed us to offer people who've lost their jobs to COVID free grocery shopping through the Food Hub. So they get a promo code that they can enter when they're ordering their food. So it's like $85 a week for families. And that was really successful, picked up really quickly. Kind of breaks your heart because there's so much more need. And, you know, people are definitely food insecure. So, you know, it's definitely a struggle and something that we're really trying to, you know, figure out if there's other ways that we can expand that. The home delivery also, I think, it was really great for a lot of people because they got to stay home, and that I think that was really appreciated. So we're just going to keep doing that until we have the all clear with COVID, and we have so many great volunteers that are doing that right now. It's amazing. So they go out, you know, we have protocols for them. They're all fantastic. They follow everything, all our rules, and really, yeah, they really prioritize doing it, and it gets them out of the house too, they say. So, so that's great too. So I just wanted to just share this beautiful picture of this lady from Port Hawkesbury that got her Food Hub order last week, and I just wanted to share it because it demonstrates that there is still food growing here in Cape Breton over the winter. So we always think that that like our climate is terrible, and right now it is. Like I'm looking outside and seeing all the snow on the trees around my house. I'm like, but there is still a lot of great food available. So in this case, you can see she has microgreens that are being grown outside of Bedeque, also outside of Sydney. So kind of two different people that are doing microgreens. And she has a beautiful cabbage there that was stored from last fall from Iking Farm. And then of course we still have meat. So other places are running out. We will run out also. Some of our producers are starting to run out now. But there's definitely food here, and we have such a great variety, and we have so many amazing people in this community that I think we can really expand that, and I think we can get to a place. It will take us a few years, but I think we can get to a place where we really don't have to worry so much about our food security, like our food sovereignty here in our local food system. So I think we are on a very good trajectory to have a really strong local food economy in Cape Breton. So I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. Okay, now I can see all your faces again. So that's all I have for my kind of formal part of the presentation, but I would love to have conversations and chat with you guys.
I know it's pretty here. I'm a member and I noticed in this monthly order there was no chicken. What's with the chicken?
Yeah, chicken is sold out from everybody.
Oh.
Yeah. So so I think early on, because usually the producers would have chicken from last fall right up until the spring, right? Or like right up until the new stock comes in. And I don't know, it must have been like a week into COVID, everybody just started buying chicken. It was crazy. There was so much chicken bought. And like, yeah, all 3 farms that we have that sell chicken just sold out. It was amazing.
When does next year's come in?
June.
June. Okay.
June. Yeah. So that's a big gap, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed it.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to hear more about the production side of things. Like, what's your vision as to what production looks like here on Cape Breton? If we did have more, we were able to sell more, what are our limitations in terms of producing?
Yeah, so it's interesting, 100 years ago, Cape Breton actually exported food. We were a net exporter of food. And some of the crops that you would never think of, like grain or fruit. So, and I think right now, I do know the stat, but the percentage of the farmland that we're actually using is tiny. Like we have so much room just in our existing farmland now to expand. So I think that, well, I guess two things. I mean, I think that one thing is that we do need to do something about the season, the issue here, because like what seems to be happening is that every spring we're getting like this weird colder weather off and on, not like consistently, but we're getting these weird snowstorms. Last year we had hail in the middle of the summer that destroyed a lot of crops, and then frosts that are happening, right up until July. So, and then kind of on the other end, the fall end, it's either way too hot and things are getting like scorched, or we're getting early frost. So I think we have to get more people growing undercover, like using greenhouses and using row covers, high tunnels, low tunnels, that type of thing. I think we really need to make a push for season extension technology and just weather protection technology, to be honest, right? Because when that hailstorm happened, things that were these hot, the tunnels are kind of like plastic, right? So they do protect the plants. Obviously not the most romantic way to grow things, but I think, with what we're seeing with the different changes in our weather, which we just can't predict it anymore, right? So, I mean, who knew we'd have this massive snowstorm on April 28th? So, so I think that's one thing. And then I think, we have people that want to move here, that want the lifestyle, want the cheaper land, and I think that we can capitalize on that by using those assets that are available, which is land. We have farmland that's available. So I think there's been some work being done, between our different counties and different people kind of looking at, well, what are those assets and how can we get them into people's hands? So I think all of those things are kind of starting to gel. And then at the end of the day too, I think, well, for so long, the farmers here didn't make any money, right? Like in a lot of cases, it was costing people money to keep farming, meaning they had to work off of their farm, so that they had money to inject into their farm. Actually, Dennis laughed, and I don't think he'll mind if I tell this joke, but Dennis, who a lot of you guys know, someone asked him one time, what would you do if you won the lottery? And he said, I'd keep farming until it was all gone.
Yeah.
Right? So, and that really has been the sad reality for farming here for a lot of years. So I do think that if we can help people actually have sustainable, viable businesses, then more people will want to get into it. And, and usually if you can create demand, usually businesses do kind of flow into that. And that also, we have a lot of products here in Cape Breton that we have a tremendous surplus of. If you think about blueberries, lobster, crab, basically every kind of fish we're exporting. But even in vegetable production, like the fact that Iking still has turnip and cabbage from last fall stored, and they have a lot, there are definitely products that we have a surplus of now that I think we could use to kind of serve that market too. We just all have to eat more cabbage.
On that note, Alicia, can I ask something?
Sure.
With the the extra cabbage, I'm thinking sauerkraut, and the fruit we get in the fall, I'm thinking canning. Those are things that, is anybody doing that? Would that fit into the food hub?
Yep. So Yeah, so there are a couple of producers that are doing kind of some small scale fermenting, like sauerkraut. There's two that are part of the food hub, and some people that are doing some canning, but it's not, we don't, as of now, we don't really have facilities that anybody could do that on a larger scale. So it's like a very, very small scale. So part of the future plan for the food hub is to have a facility that will allow for that kind of, you know, larger scale, not huge scale, but larger scale food processing. Yeah, and canning.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Can I ask you, what else do you have lots of besides cabbage?
I think, you know, there's so many products that have so much room to expand. So if you think about bread, right? Like most of the bakeries could be baking twice what they are, you know, things like that. But salad greens, there seems to be like a lot of salad greens, and I'm worried that this summer, because we don't know what's going to happen with restaurants, and like the restaurants in Cape Breton buy tremendous amounts of salad greens because a lot of people eat salads in restaurants. I'm not 100% sure that they eat them all the time at home. So yeah, I think we're going to have a surplus of things like that for sure. But even like, you know, products like honey and maple syrup and things like that, like we produce a lot of those types of products for sure. And sea salt, we now have people making sea salt, and we've an endless supply of sea salt.
What's your truth here? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
What's the blueberry situation like right now? Do you have any boxes left?
Yeah, so we have 2 or 3, I think just 2 of our producers still have berries left from last year. And they have a lot. There are quite a few. Yeah. So that would be Waikagama Bayside, Marilyn McDonald, who some of you guys might know, and also Jim McDonald from Marguerite Wild Blueberries. So, and then we have a third blueberry producer that usually sells through us, Blue Pearl Farm. They're a certified organic blueberry operation in Strathloran in Inverness County, but I believe that they are out of berries right now. So, but everyone else has them, so you can still make smoothies and.
We have one person joining us on the telephone, and I'm not sure if they know how to mute or unmute. So whoever you are on the phone ending in 2403, I'm going to offer to unmute you. And yeah, is there anything you'd like to comment on or have a question about?
Not right now, no.
All right. Well,
I have some blueberries frozen in my freezer.
Excellent. That's great. I always have blueberries frozen in my freezer. It's like a thing from childhood. You know, I grew up on a really small subsistence farm, and you know, everything we did had to do with, you know, putting food away for the winter. So blueberries is like, if I don't have a big bag of blueberries in my freezer, like I cannot go into the winter. So I appreciate your similarity.
That's an interesting topic. I'd love to hear from the group if people's behavior around food storage has changed during this last month or so, or even just your thinking around it. I know some people sort of grow up imagining their parents had been through times when food shortages and food storage was the primary concern in life. And I wonder if your own habits have changed over this last month or so, if anyone would be willing to share. Our pantry is pretty darn full, I can say that much, and a couple freezers, and yeah, thinking ahead seems more of a priority.
I don't know if mine has changed that much, just because, or I'm here by myself, and I think it's my father's influence, because there was always everything was always well stocked. I mean, that was the way that this house was. So I don't think I've really changed much because that's the way I've always gone along and done. Especially just like I say, being here by myself, it's a little easier, I think.
I love that idea that the ritual goes along with the house itself. Really
very much so here.
Great.
I think I'm just thinking ahead a little bit more, like we usually go into town 2 or 3 times a week. Now we go in. I don't even go in. My daughter goes in once a week. And think ahead. And I noticed that the co-op in Bedeck ran out of yeast last week. And I do believe a lot of people are doing a lot of baking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Alicia, are you seeing, I mean, we're one of these younger, I can't say young families anymore, but younger families that came here and would have loved to have farmed and unfortunately couldn't find a formula that worked for us. And it ended up making more sense financially to work off the farm. And so we produce as much as we can, and we recognize for ourselves that that's often at a loss.
Yeah.
But a rewarding loss, and we think that it's worth it for a lot of reasons and are happy to do it and love doing it. But we'd love to expand if there was a business model. And I don't know what that might look like, but there could be.
We should talk.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
But it'd be great to, I hear your enthusiasm about getting that information out to people so that you can imagine, so that folks can imagine what the possibilities might be.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too, like when I meet farmers from like Northern Ontario or Newfoundland that want to move to Cape Breton, and they always say like, and your growing season is so great here.
You're so lucky, it's so long.
So long. But the land, you know, the cost of land being cheap here, which is, you know, I think, you know, that was the case in the 1960s and 70s also, right? That's where a lot of people moved here. A lot of the homesteaders moved here during that time. So the land isn't as cheap now as it was then. But if you look at like farmland in Ontario, for an example, it's just so expensive that it's just so out of reach for most people. So I think we still do have an advantage there.
Do you have any, I'm trying to think how to put, like, here in Jersey Cove, this was a family farm back in my grandparents' time. Like, and there's 114 acres of land. Are there any plans, or is there anything happening now where people are sort of renting land or using the land? Like, I would love to see this property. I mean, I just use a very small part of it, and there's probably 100 acres or more that are not being used at all. Yeah. So is there anything like that where people are interested in renting land or using it?
I know that Inverness County has been looking at that issue for a few years. I don't know where they're sitting on it, but I know that was definitely identified as one of their priorities. I don't know that because one of the things I think they were trying to do was kind of do like almost an asset mapping to see where the different pieces of land were and who could use them. Okay. But I don't think that ever really got a lot of traction. But I could check in and see what's going on with it. Because yeah, I think it's a great idea. Because you're right, there's so much land that's just sitting empty that, you know, somebody could be using for sure. Yeah. It's kind of maybe just a matter of matchmaking, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matchmaking and communicating.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lorna. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I have a lot of land here, and when my husband lived, we had a 40 by 40 garden, and we grew just about everything in there. And I'm willing to have somebody use that land or rent it, or just not even rent it.
Yeah, just use it.
Yeah.
And grow. We grew a lot of potatoes, peas. We even had corn and carrots. And the land that he used was well manured and well. And I have a big compost bin up there near the garden that could be used. And it would be lovely, but I'm too old to do anything like that myself.
Yeah. Do you know about Dennis Laffin has like a community garden project, I think?
Oh yeah, I was involved last summer. Yeah, I had a box and I grew radishes and beets.
Nice.
And carrots and onions.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. But maybe touch base with Dennis, anybody who has extra land. And I just wonder if any of the people that were involved in that project that maybe want to expand, maybe would want to use some of your land.
Idea. Yeah.
I don't know. Just a thought.
We'll be curious to see this community garden going into the second and third year, because I know one of the great rewards of that was the teaching and learning that happened because of doing the project together. So it was almost like I didn't participate myself and regretted it, just for the sheer fact of being able to go somewhere and the expertise that was there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm curious. I think that model could expand if there was still this input of information and teaching.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So let us know if you have more questions or comments, and otherwise we can look to wrap up. I'm just wondering, maybe when I send out the invitation to this weekly event, and I'm not quite sure who we'll have next week, but there'll be somebody, that I might also send around like a healthy snack suggestion so that we can kind of virtually share. It'll have to be ingredients that are in most people's kitchens at this time. But maybe there's some way we can start something of, I don't know, sharing recipes or whatever. There could be an aspect to the call where we can kind of share a food experience, even virtually.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
So thank you so much, Alicia. That was a great presentation.
Yes.
And I learned a lot. It was, really fantastic.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It was really nice to see all your lovely faces and hear your voices. And it's really nice to stay connected to people in the community. I've been feeling a little isolated. So this was really, really nice for me too. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll all go and enjoy meals in our separate, segregated houses. Yeah.
Right.
But I hope you'll join us again next week and look online. I think there'll be a mail out coming out at the end of the week for the county about the some of the food delivery, as well as this program and the seniors party line, so that everyone who might not have access to social media online is getting the information they need. So hopefully you'll share that around.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so take care, and we'll be posting this video.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.